We think we know what patients want. We know every patient is different, but taking the time to listen is so critical. So to know about what we can do to help you and other patients better.
Well, you can help us by...
Welcome to the SCDM Podcast series on partnership in clinical trials. Welcome to the SCDM Podcast, Marilyn, on partnership and collaboration. Today is really about collaborating with patients, Marilyn. And for the audience, do you mind introducing yourself and your story?
I'm Marilyn Neault, and I'm 76 years old. I have Parkinson's disease, and I serve as a participant advocate under the umbrella of the Parkinson's Foundation, where I received some training in participant advocacy for clinical trials. In my career, I worked as an audiologist in an academic medical center, and so I had an opportunity to participate in research on the investigator end. I was a co-investigator for a few studies involving hearing in children. And so when I had the opportunity to learn some participant advocacy on the other side, it was a natural desire for me to participate in that.
Yeah, thanks, Marilyn. You know, when we met, we discussed the benefits you are gaining from participating in clinical trial and some of the drawbacks you are experiencing. Maybe can you share what you got out of it in participating in clinical trials, Marilyn?
On the whole, the experience has been positive, participating in clinical trials. I would say that the most important thing is that I learned more about my own condition because of the detailed way that it is followed in a clinical trial. And I feel as though I got more direct attention to my condition. Once I had to do a training to rate my condition every 30 minutes through the day, and a nurse was rating it at the same time and comparing, and it taught me that my reaction to the medication is cyclical through the day, and I could predict it, and this made me feel more in control.
Yeah. And when you come to the less positive, I know you had participated in a few phase 3 trials.
Yes.
And you have seen different practices. So maybe do you want to share an example of things we can do better to first hear you and make your life easier participating in clinical trials, Marilyn?
Okay, some of the things that happened seem trivial, but when you're in a clinical trial and you don't know whether you're taking a drug or not, and it's not a drug that half the population has taken before, you don't know if it is risky, you're tuned to pay attention to small things, and they mean a lot. So, for example, there was a form that I was going to need to fill out on a daily basis, and the font on it was so tiny, and the spaces where we would mark the little X's were ridiculously small. And I actually made a form that was better and could be folded to put in your pocket, and one that would not lead you to make mistakes, and gave it to them. And I wasn't really expecting them to use it because the trial was already underway, maybe the next trial. But it would have been nice if there had been an acknowledgement. Just thank you for noticing this and bringing it to our attention.
So you didn't get any acknowledgement, no actions following your offer to improve the way to collect data, which is pretty...
Right, just a simple acknowledgement.
Yeah.
I think the general attitude is one that the investigators should adopt a stony face and not react to much of anything, because it would look biased or bias the participant in some way. But that's not normal behavior. So then you're judging the drug in an abnormal reaction environment.
Yeah.
So there were other things that happened. One trial was terminated abruptly. So abruptly it was, do not take another pill, because a small number of patients had a serious side effect, which I did not, and I was doing really well.
Okay.
But I had to stop the drug cold turkey, and there was no taper.
Yeah.
And I suppose in the consent somewhere it had some indication that stuff like this could happen.
Yeah.
But I wasn't very prepared for it. I wasn't well prepared. In another trial, I had a side effect that wasn't on the list, shall we say, but come to find out later, there were others in the trial who had the same thing. And then return of results is an issue that I think is getting more and more important with more awareness.
Yeah.
I think it used to be we would assume that we wouldn't get our results. But then when you really live through it and you don't know whether you were taking a placebo for 6 months or a dopamine receptor agonist, and it becomes part of your clinical history and the way that your body reacted and the way your brain will react in the future that you did this. And you want to know. And so it should be made very clear at the start what information the participant will find out eventually and when.
Yeah.
Because it may not be till the data lock after it's all over. But if there are several parts to the trial and they go on and take a subgroup and do something else, then the study might not really be over and you might not get the result for a very long time, but at least to find out whether you were taking the drug or not, I think is important.
Yeah. The fact of not having the information about the drug you received, would it make you question your willingness to participate in the next trial?
It definitely would. It didn't influence my decision to participate in the first trial, but things that happen during the trial affect one's decision to participate in the next trial.
Yeah, absolutely. On hearing your story, looks like you have not always been transparently told upfront what could happen, and after the fact, what happened. And maybe that gap of information could be leading to some, I don't say mistrust, but uncomfort, maybe at times, participating in a clinical trial. Is that right?
Yes, and wouldn't it be nice for participants to know what happened to the drug? Did it go on to get approved?
Yeah.
Because it's going to have a completely different name from whatever it's called during the trial, probably. And we would never know, was that the same thing? Just from the TV ads. And how will the drug change patterns of treatment for this condition? You know, it would just be a measure of respect to the participant to let them know what happened and what the big picture is.
Yeah. And maybe now if we switch gear a tiny bit, I know for you, you live in the Boston area. To go to the city could be a long drive. And we've been talking about ensuring we give the maximum flexibility to patients. From your experience participating in clinical trial, how much flexibility has been given to you, and what would you want as flexible options when it comes to participation in telemedicine, home nursing, or whatever you think is appropriate for you, Marilyn?
Well, I've been lucky because even though I can't drive anymore, my husband does willingly drive me to clinical trial appointments. But that ties up two of us.
Yeah.
And driving into the city, even if you live in a close suburb, it's a day-long affair to to have a clinical trial visit. So I think more of the visits could be done virtually with consideration that the things that have to be done in person, blood draws, EKGs, whatever, it should be really reviewed how many of those are needed and clump them for visits when either somebody's coming to the home, which could happen too, or you go into the center.
Yeah, and I believe you had to go to visit, which were very short, right? For a long time, for like a few, just a few time with the site.
Yeah, I have no problem with going into the site at the beginning and end of the trial and periodically as needed. But if it could have been done virtually, it's pretty obvious, and you still get the same, if not better, contact.
Yeah. So, have you been able to participate in a virtual visit or been given the options to use home nursing? If so, what was your experience?
I've had virtual visits for clinical care, but very little, just a couple of times for during a clinical trial. And I wouldn't want a virtual visit for the initial visit.
Yeah.
I want to see here, I want to see where they work. I want to, I want to know the people in three dimensions that I'm going to be giving my blood to. But the experiences with virtual visits that I have had have been excellent. The technology has worked, thanks to the pandemic, getting everybody in gear. And they've been on time. And I actually feel as though the patient-to-doctor contact that you get in a virtual visit can be better than in the same room. Because when you're in the same room, the doctor is often turned sideways or with his or her back to you, looking at a computer screen. Whereas in a virtual visit, you are the computer screen. So you're looking face to face for a longer period of time.
It's very good feedback. Have you ever been offered home nursing, home healthcare? And if not, would have you wanted to?
I have not been offered that option during research. I was once offered that option clinically for a physical exam to be done in the home through a new program, and I have no problem with it at all.
The problem with it, and I believe when we talked before is going at the beginning of the trial and after. So you really wanted, if I understand, to have an interaction with the investigator at the beginning to fully understand the protocol and being given transparently information of what is expected from you. And at the end, is really having almost a closure on your participation and being given back information about what went well and what didn't go as well, right?
That's an invitation to give feedback and advocacy to help the next trial go better.
Two different questions about your involvement as a patient advocate. I know you're involved with the Parkinson Foundation, and you're also an active supporter of activities conducted by the MRCT Center. So can you share what drove you to participate in the Parkinson Foundation, and what was the value proposition in you joining the MRCT working group on creating this plain language glossary, Marilyn?
For the Parkinson Foundation, after I took the 3-day research advocate training, the Parkinson Foundation got in touch with me and gave me the opportunity to consider being the advocate on the Parkinson's Outcomes Project steering committee, and I was the first one they had had. And I remember one of the first meetings, I noticed a mislabeled ordinate on a graph and mentioned it, and somebody said, Marilyn, that isn't what we really want from you. We want the patient viewpoint. So I realized I really did need to drop my career hat and be more attentive to describing the patient viewpoint, which is what they wanted. They still let me notice a mislabeled graph, but every participant advocate will bring to the table different skills.
Absolutely. Yeah.
From their makeup and from their background and their job, which can be valuable. And so that group has given me the opportunity to review manuscripts, to review data sharing requests, to advise on protocols that involve patients filling out surveys and so forth, what would work. It's been a wonderful experience. That study is wrapping up and going into just a data sharing and publication phase, and the participants are rolling over into the PV gene study, a genetic study, which is very exciting. When the Multi-Regional Clinical Trial Center at Brigham and Women's and Harvard needed a participant advocate, they called the Parkinson Foundation, and the Parkinson Foundation gave them my name. And I have enjoyed participating in that group immensely because health literacy has been an interest of mine for a long time. And so I participate in developing definitions at the moment for this clinical research glossary that we're working on, because I just feel that all the stakeholders in the project need to have an agreement what a certain term means, or communication is going to break down.
Yes. No terminology in clinical trial could be complex and easily misunderstood by patients. So I strongly believe that having a plain English glossary for patients to understand is very critical. So maybe before we conclude, Marilyn, is there anything you would like the industry, the regulator, to know about what we can do to help you and other patients better?
Well, you can help us by improving the trials, by having a patient advocate involved early and frequently, and not waiting until the manuscript is in the correction phase. That for sure. As far as the participation experience itself, I think taking a moment at the beginning to have the conversation with the potential participant about what it would mean to be in this trial. If you do this study, will having taken this drug make it so that you are not a candidate for another procedure? During the trial, or perhaps ever. And really review the schedule so that if they're planning to be away or something, you're not going to have a very costly dropout from the study. Really make sure it will work for them. The preparation, the human interaction element, when there is contact, for example, a survey that is supposed to be read by the investigator rather than filled out at the table. It seems to me that in a clinical trial it is done so mechanically that it makes you feel a little put off sometimes, or a little bit as though something is wrong, but they're not saying it. And if we want to know how the drug reacts in normal clinical situations, this abnormal reaction can be baffling.
Yeah.
You wonder if there's something wrong and
Yeah.
they're not telling you. Because you have a series of blood draws, EKGs, this and that, and nobody says anything.
Yeah.
And so you're wondering what's going on.
I think it goes back to the transparency and information sharing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's the transportation.
Yeah.
There's transportation. There's for some people it's a big deal to have to take a day and go for a trial. They aren't going to get paid. They might not be paid at work that day. Yeah. They might find the gas expensive, whatever.
Absolutely.
Or they might have to pay for a ride another way. So some kind of transportation program they can contact is a good idea.
I think so, yeah.
But, I do want to tell you, most patients who participate in clinical trials feel honored to do so. And if you ask them why they're doing it, very often they'll say, it's because I'm grateful for, and it could be because of the care their mother received somewhere for something else, but this is the way that they have found to give back to people who spent their lives trying to learn how to make people feel better.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's very important that we always forget that we think we know what patients want. We know every patient is different, but taking the time to listen is so critical. So, and your feedback is invaluable, Marilyn. So I wanted to thank you immensely, Marilyn, for sharing your voice and your expectation as a patient. Your words are clear and will carry a lot of weight to our community. So I want to thank you deeply for joining us.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk with people from a profession I knew very little about and hear them sharing their varied viewpoints and collaborating together.
Thanks you, Marilyn. Thank you. That's Marilyn.